When a man loses a good woman, he doesn't realize it right away. At first, there's pride, that quiet, stubborn voice whispering, "I'll be fine without her." But then the silence sets in, and it's loud. He walks into rooms that used to feel alive, and now they feel empty. The laughter that once filled his world becomes an echo in his mind, and that's when he learns the painful truth. Losing a good woman isn't just losing love, it's losing direction, warmth, and the mirror that showed him who he could have been at his best. Many men live under the illusion of control. They believe that they can dictate the terms of every relationship, that they can choose when to love deeply and when to pull away, as if the human heart obeyed logic and timing. When a man has a good woman by his side, he often doesn't realize that her presence is the invisible structure holding his life together. She brings balance, emotional grounding, and a kind of stability that doesn't announce itself. It simply exists, quietly, faithfully, like gravity. Yet when he loses her, he's confronted with the devastating truth that what he thought he controlled was never his to command. The illusion of control is one of the greatest traps men fall into, and it often stems from pride. A man might tell himself he doesn't need anyone, that he's self-sufficient, that his emotions are secondary to his ambitions. Society even encourages this. It praises the stoic man, the unshakable, the independent. But here's the paradox. The more he tries to control everything, his emotions, his partner, his environment, the less control he actually has. Because control isn't strength, understanding is. And a good woman brings that understanding. She humanizes his ambition, she softens his edges, she teaches him that vulnerability isn't weakness. When she's gone, the illusion starts to crumble. The routines that once felt natural become mechanical. He wakes up, goes through his day, maybe even keeps achieving, but something's missing. That silent encouragement, that unspoken belief she carried for him. The absence of that presence exposes a deeper emptiness. He begins to see that her care wasn't control. It was contribution. She wasn't there to restrict him, but to refine him. There's often a moment, and men who've lost a good woman will recognize it, when he tries to fill the void with distraction. He'll bury himself in work, in social circles, maybe even in fleeting connections. He tells himself he's fine, but the truth is the illusion of control only grows thinner with every attempt to replace what was genuine with what's convenient. Late at night, when he's left with his thoughts, he begins to understand that real connection was never about control. It was about surrendering to something greater than himself. The shared growth between two people who see each other's potential. The irony is, many men lose a good woman not because they didn't love her, but because they couldn't handle what loving her required. It required honesty, not the kind you perform, but the kind that exposes your flaws. It required humility, to admit when you're wrong, to listen instead of defend. And most of all, it required trust, not just in her, but in the vulnerability that love demands. When he loses that, he's not just losing her presence, he's losing a mirror that reflected his better self. Over time, reality sets in. He realizes that control was never the goal. Understanding was. A man who understands himself, who learns to face his fears and confront his ego, becomes capable of real strength. But that usually comes after the fall, after the silence, after the space where she used to be. The pain of that loss becomes a teacher, often more powerful than any success. It humbles him. It reminds him that love isn't about dominance, it's about mutual respect, about two people willingly walking side by side, not one person trying to lead the other by force. When he finally accepts this, something changes. The illusion fades, and in its place, awareness begins to grow. He sees that the control he once fought for was actually fear. Fear of being seen, fear of being hurt, fear of not being enough. A good woman, when she was there, saw past that fear and loved him anyway. And when she's gone, he realizes that losing her wasn't just a consequence of circumstance. It was the cost of refusing to let go of that illusion. So the man who loses a good woman learns, sometimes too late, that true control isn't about having power over another person. It's about having mastery over yourself. It's the ability to stay calm when your ego screams, to be open when your instincts tell you to close off, to love with integrity even when you fear loss. And if he's wise, he uses that pain not as punishment but as transformation. Because once the illusion of control is gone, what remains is truth, raw, humbling, but freeing. That's when he begins to rebuild, not from pride but from awareness, and that's the foundation on which a man can finally grow into someone capable of not just keeping a good woman, but truly deserving one. When a good woman leaves, her absence doesn't simply remove her from a man's life, it rearranges the entire emotional landscape he once lived in. The air changes, the rhythm of his days changes. There's a subtle quiet that follows her, not the peaceful kind, but the heavy kind, the silence that speaks louder than any argument or goodbye ever could. A good woman doesn't just exist in a man's world, she shapes it in ways he rarely notices while she's still there. Her love, her consistency, her care, they weave themselves into the smallest corners of his daily existence, and when she's gone, those same corners become reminders of everything he took for granted. At first, he might not notice. He tells himself he's fine, that he just needs space, that she'll come back, or that someone else will eventually fill that role. Pride becomes his shield, and he hides behind it, pretending he's unaffected. But the truth has a way of creeping in through the quiet moments. The coffee doesn't taste the same, the home feels colder, and even his victories seem duller. The woman who once filled his life with warmth has left behind a silence that echoes through everything he does. It's in the way the mornings feel slower, in the way music hits differently, in the way he avoids places they once went together. What most men don't realize is that a good woman's presence often carries invisible weight, the emotional labor that holds life together. She remembers things he forgets, she sees moods he doesn't notice, she nurtures connection when he's too distracted to try. She creates an emotional home where he feels grounded, often without him ever acknowledging it. When she leaves, that balance collapses. Suddenly, the man is confronted with the reality that her quiet efforts weren't just nice gestures, they were the backbone of stability in his life. The meals, the words of encouragement, the gentle accountability, all the things he brushed off as small now reveal themselves as enormous. The echo of her absence doesn't only highlight what she did, it exposes what he didn't. He starts to see the conversations he avoided, the affection he withheld, the moments he chose distraction over presence. A good woman doesn't leave without reason. She leaves after she's tried everything, and when she finally walks away, her absence becomes a mirror reflecting his choices. It's no longer about what she failed to do, it's about what he refused to see. There's a stage every man goes through after losing a good woman. A kind of reckoning. It's not immediate, it builds slowly. At first it's confusion. Why does this hurt so much? Then it becomes reflection. Did I do enough? And finally, regret, son, I should have done more. But by then, the silence has already taught its lesson. He realizes that her absence has a texture. It's the absence of laughter, the absence of being understood without having to explain, the absence of being believed in even when he doubted himself. It's an emptiness that can't be filled with noise or distraction. It can only be faced, and facing it changes a man. He begins to see the emotional architecture she built for him, the way she anchored him during chaos, the way she softened his roughness without taking away his strength, the way she believed in his potential long before he saw it himself. He realizes that her love wasn't just affection. It was structure, it was purpose, it was belief. Losing that is like losing oxygen. It doesn't kill him instantly, but it suffocates him slowly. In time, he starts to understand that her absence was never punishment. It was consequence, a reflection of imbalance. The echo she left behind isn't just emptiness, it's a call to awareness. It challenges him to become the kind of man who values what he once overlooked, because once he's felt the depth of a good woman's absence, he can never truly be the same again. The laughter he ignored, the small kindnesses he dismissed, the emotional safety he took for granted, all of it becomes sacred in hindsight. A man who has experienced that kind of loss learns something profound about love. It's not guaranteed, and it's not replaceable. You can find another woman, yes, but you can't recreate her essence, the specific harmony between her soul and yours. When she's gone, he understands that her absence isn't just the loss of a person, it's the loss of a whole emotional ecosystem. So the echo of her absence isn't just pain, it's a teacher. It strips away his illusions and confronts him with truth. And if he listens, truly listens, he'll come to realize that the silence she left behind is not a void to be filled, but a space for transformation. It's the moment he finally understands that love isn't about possession or pride, it's about presence, gratitude, and awareness. And once a man learns that lesson, he'll never treat love the same way again. When a man loses a good woman, he eventually reaches a moment when he's forced to meet himself, not the version he shows to the world, not the confident, composed, controlled persona, but the raw, unfiltered self that hides behind pride and distraction. This is the confrontation he's avoided for years, maybe for his entire life. While she was with him, she often acted as a mirror, reflecting both his strengths and his flaws. She saw who he could become even when he didn't. She saw his potential, his insecurities, his unspoken pain, and she tried to help him rise above it. But when she's gone, that mirror disappears, and he's left staring into the one reflection that can't lie, the one that comes from within. This confrontation is rarely gentle. It starts with confusion. He feels restless, unsettled, and he doesn't fully understand why. On the surface, he tells himself it's just loneliness or routine, but deep down, something bigger is shifting. He starts to recognize that his emotional avoidance, his detachment, his dismissiveness weren't signs of strength, they were signs of fear. Fear of vulnerability, fear of being known too deeply, fear of needing someone. And that realization hurts because now there's no one left to soften it. A good woman's love often shields a man from his own emotional blindness, but her absence removes that protection. What's left is the truth, and it demands to be faced. This moment becomes the turning point. He starts to replay the past in his mind, not to romanticize it, but to understand it. Every argument, every ignored text, every moment of silence now takes on new meaning. He sees her efforts not as nagging or overreacting, but as attempts to connect, attempts he dismissed because he wasn't ready to face himself. He begins to realize that her patience was a form of grace, and that grace was finite. She wasn't asking him to be perfect, she was asking him to be present. And when he couldn't, she left. Not because she stopped loving him, but because she couldn't keep carrying both her emotions and his avoidance. In the quiet aftermath, he begins to feel the weight of his own patterns. He recognizes how easy it was to deflect blame, to rationalize his emotional distance as maturity, when in truth it was fear disguised as control. He remembers the times she tried to open up, the moments when she reached out with vulnerability and he responded with indifference or coldness. He begins to see how his inability to confront his own emotions created a wall between them, one that eventually became too heavy for her to climb. That's when the guilt sets in, not just for losing her, but for betraying the version of himself that she believed in. This confrontation with self is brutal, but it's also necessary. Without it, a man can go through life repeating the same cycles, blaming every failed relationship on circumstance, never realizing that the real battle was internal. A good woman's departure strips away those illusions. It forces him to ask hard questions. Who am I without her support? Why did I need her validation to feel whole? Why did I push away the one person who wanted to see me win? These questions cut deep because they expose a painful truth that emotional growth doesn't happen through success or praise, it happens through loss and reflection. Eventually, he starts to see her not as someone who left him, but as someone who revealed him, someone who showed him what needed healing. He begins to understand that love is not about possession or control, but about partnership and accountability. She didn't demand perfection, she desired authenticity. And now, standing alone, he starts to appreciate that authenticity is harder than he thought. It requires courage to face what's broken inside, to accept responsibility, to rebuild without bitterness. Over time, if he chooses to grow, this confrontation becomes his awakening. He learns that emotional strength isn't about being untouched by pain, it's about allowing pain to teach him. He learns to listen without defensiveness, to love without fear, to be present without conditions. The man who once ran from his emotions now learns to sit with them. The silence that once tormented him becomes a space for reflection, and in that stillness, he begins to see himself clearly, flawed, imperfect, but capable of change. When a man reaches this point, he finally understands what that good woman was trying to show him all along, that love isn't meant to fix you, it's meant to reveal you. And sometimes, it takes losing that love to truly meet the man you were always meant to become. Her absence becomes his teacher, her memory, his motivation, and his reflection, for the first time, becomes honest. That's the gift hidden in the loss, not just the pain of what's gone, but the rebirth of the man he's now willing to face. A good woman teaches a man what value truly means, but the lesson rarely registers while she's still there. Her love doesn't come with fireworks or grand speeches. It comes in the quiet, consistent ways she shows up for him. She remembers the things he forgets, believes in him when he doubts himself, and carries faith in the relationship even when it's heavy. But because her love is steady, it's often mistaken for something ordinary. A man who hasn't yet learned emotional maturity can confuse predictability with boredom, loyalty with routine, and care with expectation. He doesn't realize that her consistency is the most powerful expression of value until she's gone. When she leaves, the world doesn't fall apart instantly. On the surface, everything seems fine. He goes about his life as if nothing has changed, convincing himself that he's moving on. But slowly, the absence of that steady energy begins to show. The things she did without being asked no longer happen. The way she made him feel understood is replaced by silence. The emotional structure she built around him, the one he took for granted, begins to collapse, and only then does he understand what true value feels like. It's the absence that hurts, not just the loss. Value for many men is something they associate with effort or achievement, something earned through struggle or success. But the presence of a good woman teaches a different kind of value, one rooted in emotional connection, trust, and shared growth. She invests not because she wants something in return, but because she sees potential in him, in them, in what they could build together. She gives from a place of belief, not obligation. And that's rare. When he loses that, he realizes he didn't just lose a partner, he lost someone who chose him every day, even when he wasn't easy to love. The painful part is that this realization often comes too late. A good woman's love is subtle. It doesn't demand attention. It offers peace. And because peace doesn't shout, he doesn't hear it until it's gone. Only in her absence does he recognize how her patience was a form of strength, how her emotional intelligence guided the relationship, and how her ability to forgive kept them from falling apart sooner. He begins to understand that she wasn't just kind, she was resilient. She didn't stay because it was easy, she stayed because she believed in something bigger than comfort. That's the lesson of value. It's not about what someone gives you in moments of passion or perfection, it's about who stands beside you when life tests you. A good woman adds value, not just through love, but through stability. She's the emotional anchor that keeps the man grounded when he's drifting, and the quiet voice that reminds him of his worth when he forgets it. When she leaves, that grounding disappears and he feels untethered. He starts to miss not just her presence, but the version of himself he was when she believed in him. That's when he understands that her value wasn't just emotional, it was transformative. There's a particular kind of regret that comes from realizing you underestimated a good woman. It's not loud or dramatic, it's quiet, heavy, and constant. He thinks about the moments he dismissed her concerns, the times he chose ego over empathy, the times he made her feel like she was asking for too much when she was only asking to be seen. Those memories linger because now he sees the truth. She wasn't asking for more than he could give, she was asking for more than he was willing to give. And that's the difference between love that lasts and love that breaks. Eventually, this loss becomes a teacher. It shows him that value isn't measured by excitement or novelty, but by consistency and depth. It teaches him that a good woman's love is an opportunity, not a guarantee. It's a chance to rise, to become better, to give back what you're given. Losing her strips away his illusions, the belief that love is replaceable, that people will wait forever, that effort can come later. He learns that nothing of true worth lasts without appreciation. If he grows from the loss, he begins to carry that lesson forward. The next time he meets someone with that same depth, he listens differently. He pays attention to the small things, the quiet gestures, the moments that once seemed insignificant. He understands that love isn't about constant thrill. It's about mutual respect and gratitude. He becomes gentler, more attentive, more intentional, because once a man has lost a good woman, he never sees love the same way again. And that's the paradox of value. You often learn it through loss. A good woman doesn't just show a man what love looks like, she shows him what kind of man he's capable of being when he values it. When she's gone, he finally sees that her worth wasn't just in her presence, but in the reflection of himself she helped him discover. And by the time he realizes it, the lesson remains, a permanent reminder that true value is never about what you have, but about what you honor while you still have it. Some men crumble when they lose a good woman, and others awaken. It's one of life's harshest truths. That loss can either destroy you or rebuild you, depending on how willing you are to face what it reveals. When a good woman walks away, she doesn't just take her love, she takes the version of life you built around her. The warmth, the peace, the sense of belonging, all of it goes with her. In the beginning, the man feels disoriented, almost hollow. He tries to convince himself that he's fine, that he'll move on easily, but over time that denial turns into reflection. Slowly, he realizes that this loss is not just about missing her, it's about confronting himself and the man he allowed himself to become. For some men, that realization is too painful and they fall deeper into avoidance, numbing themselves with distractions, chasing new connections, or burying their emotions under pride. But for others, this is the spark that begins transformation. The pain of losing a good woman becomes the motivation to evolve, to rebuild from within, to finally become someone capable of the love he once failed to nurture. Because once you've known the depth of a good woman's heart, you can't go back to shallow waters. Redemption doesn't happen overnight. It begins with humility, the ability to admit that you were wrong, that you took something sacred and mishandled it. This kind of honesty is brutal because it strips away every excuse, every defense mechanism. It forces a man to see the ways he pushed her away, the times he chose silence over communication, ego over empathy, comfort over courage. And when he finally stops blaming circumstances and starts taking responsibility, something powerful shifts inside him. He begins to understand that losing her wasn't a punishment, it was a wake-up call. In that awakening, he learns that love isn't sustained by passion alone, it's sustained by intention. A good woman doesn't just want affection, she wants effort, consistency, emotional safety. She wants to know that when life gets hard, he won't shut down or walk away. When she leaves behind those expectations as lessons. The man who's willing to grow will look at those lessons not as criticisms, but as a blueprint for change. He'll start working on himself, not to win her back necessarily, but to never repeat the same mistakes again. The journey of redemption is lonely. It's filled with long nights of reflection, with moments where he questions whether he's even capable of being better. But as he confronts his patterns, his pride, his fear of vulnerability, his resistance to emotional openness, he begins to see progress. He starts to rebuild his life from the inside out. The same pain that once broke him begins to refine him. He becomes more patient, more self-aware, more grounded. He learns that strength isn't about suppressing emotion, but about understanding it. He realizes that vulnerability doesn't make him weak, it makes him real. And something beautiful happens when a man reaches this point. He stops chasing love as validation and starts seeking love as partnership. He stops trying to possess and begins to protect. He understands that to truly love a woman, he must first respect himself enough to be honest, consistent, and kind. This new awareness transforms not only how he sees women, but how he sees the world. He starts appreciating the quiet forms of connection. Genuine conversations, shared values, emotional safety. He becomes the kind of man who doesn't just attract love, but sustains it. For some men, this realization comes too late for reconciliation. The good woman he lost has moved on, built her own peace, and found someone who values her. That reality hurts, but it also humbles him because now he knows the cost of neglecting something priceless. The pain of losing her becomes a compass, a reminder never to take love for granted again. Every future relationship, every meaningful bond, carries the echo of what he learned through her absence. This is the essence of redemption, turning pain into purpose. The man who once let pride lead him now lets wisdom guide him. He no longer sees vulnerability as weakness, but as strength. He no longer runs from emotional responsibility, he embraces it. And while he may never get her back, he carries the lesson she left behind, that love is sacred, that effort matters, and that growth is the truest form of apology. In the end, losing a good woman can either leave a man broken or reborn. Those who choose to learn, to grow, to take responsibility, they emerge with deeper understanding, stronger character, and greater capacity to love. They become the men they were meant to be all along, the kind who no longer take love lightly because they've felt what it's like to lose something irreplaceable. That's the power of redemption, turning loss into legacy and regret into transformation.